In today's discussion, we will discuss an important concept in Java programming or any programming language for that matter. That will be pass by reference and pass by value. So what is the difference when a variable value is passed by reference and what is the different value is passed by value? I will show you with a simple example, and then we will also show you the same example in Python tutor website so that you can see how actual variables are being handled. So let's start. So I'm using NetBeans to make my code. Here I have a simple class, my rectangle, and in here I would not have much, but let's start a double variable height, and then I also have a variable for width. Okay, and then what I would do is I will first create a constructor for it. I will insert a constructor, and by using both of the fields my constructor will be generated, and then I will insert the code for the getter and setter methods for all of my variables. So that will do, that saves some time for me. Now what I'm going to do is I want to add another method which would be the that will return a double, that will be a get area method. Method names should be some kind of verb. So sometime we can also, there is no problem, you can actually do name and it will not be an error, but by the kind of like common practice or good practices is that we should have a method name should reflect some kind of verb and action. Okay, so this dot height, and what get the height from this variable and then multiplied by this dot width. Okay, so we get that little rectangle. Now where are we going to use this? Let's use this class in another class where we will use this rectangle, right? So let's check another class out. So this is my class which I'm calling value test, or just I named it, and this class has a global variable or instance variable as you call it in Java, integer x. Do understand when a variable is declared in the instant scope or it's available to the whole class, Java compiler automatically assign it as a value of default value. If it's an integer, it will get a value of 0. If it's a string, it will get a null value, and other things will happen. But if it was a local variable and do not assign a value, I will get an error. So that is also something that we must note. Now I also have a reference type variable that is intend to refer to my rectangle class that I just made. Okay, so I do want to have a reference to my rectangle class when I make it, and I'm going to call it rect. Now in the new public void main method, I'm going to call the constructor of this class so that I can call the action. So why I do not want to call everything in here, because I will have a method that will access this my rectangle, and I don't want to make that method static, because everything in a static method must be static. I will soon do a video on why that is important, but right now we just create a constructor, and inside our constructor for this class, if you don't know what is a constructor, please watch my video. I am putting a link in here that explains what is the constructor and another concept, constructor chaining, in object-oriented programming. That's pretty useful concept. Now what we did was I said that I want to have a new my rectangle, space for my new rectangle, and it must have a height of 4.5 and a width of 5.6. Now I'm not giving, of course, any units, and it's understood whatever unit the user want to do, we can put that in. So what this will do is this part of the statement will create a location in the RAM, and then when the location is created, its value will be passed to this variable rectangle. So this or rect, rect. So this rect variable actually contains the address of the memory location where my rectangle is saved. So if you have not seen my video where about classes and objects, you might want to refer to that to understand this concept. Now what I'm doing is that I'm just printing out the value of x variable and and I kind of try to pull the area of the rectangle that I just created. Now let's check this out. Now what I'm doing here is I have another method here in the same class, which is a void math method, and I'm just calling it test method because that's what I only want to do. This method receives a reference to a rectangle. Here I just make it underscore rectangle. So that is a little bit different than this variable. It's a different variable. It's a local variable for my method, test method. And I also have a variable integer y. And what this guy does, it take this reference and set the width to 45.34. Here you can see the width is 5.6. This guy will send it to that, and it says the variable y is equal to 8. Whatever we give it in y, that becomes an 8. It doesn't matter whatever we provide it. So let's call this method in here. So I say test method, and what I want to do is I want to pass the reference of my rectangle that I have just created with these values, and I want to pass it the value of x. Okay, let me check. Okay, I might have done something. Let me check. I misspelled the word, so I fixed that. Then what I want to do is I want to call the same statement. Right. What will happen is that the area of the rectangle will be different in both places. Because what we did was we give the address of the memory location where this rectangle was living. When we give that address, this method went to this address and changed the value of width to this. That will affect this area as well. So let me copy this code into Python tutor so that you can see the variable being created and working together. Okay, that will give us a better idea of how that works because we can see the actual locations. So here I am working on Python tutor, and I'm going to move it a little bit up so that I have more space to work in its editor. So I have copied my value test class in here, which I just showed you in NetBeans, and then I have at the very bottom I have my class rectangle. What I have done is I have removed the public from here because they both are in the same file. So only one class could be declared public if they are in the same file. Let's see what happens here. We have our calls. This is the method to watch. So let's visualize the execution and see how that works. Okay, so you can see that value test instance in which x is equal to 0, and rectangle does not have a value instant. It has a reference to the rectangle instant, right? So when we pass, when we print those out and we print kind of we are ready, and we print out the value of x is 0. Well, I should have put a little bit better instruction set in here. A rectangle is equal to 25.2. Now what we have done here is in the test method we have passed the rectangle. So what we pass here is this link is being passed, and this, so both of these things are being passed on the second column, but in the second column we have the value 0, but here we have an address. So if we go further, test method, you can see that this has been passed. So y received a value of 0 and rectangle received the reference to the same place. So this is passed by reference. So this rectangle value is passed by reference because it is just a reference. It's just a location address. Even if you send a copy of the location address, it's still the same location, right? So any change that this method will make will actually be made inside this same variable, but any change that we made to y would only made to y here because it's passed by value. The only thing we have passed is the value. We did not pass where x is. So if you go further, you can see that this method has changed the value of the rectangle instance to 45.34. The y would also be changed in here. So y becomes 8, but this does not affect here because we only passed a copy of x. So this is passed by value and this is passed by reference. When you pass by value, the original elements do not get affected. But when you pass by reference, since it is the memory address of the same thing, even when you come back from your method, the values are there because the values are made in the location, not in the copy of it. So if you go in here and you see the value, you see we have a very different value for the area. So Objects are always passed by reference because what we do is when we send it to another method, we pass the address of that memory location. So when the method affect that memory location, we also get the actual values get affected. So be very careful when you make shallow and deep copies, which is also I have discussed in one of my video lectures, that what is the meaning of shallow and deep copies. Basically what we are doing is we are passing a reference which is a shallow copy of the same object. So there are two variables, one in the method and one is the original caller, that holds the same reference, and both are kind of playing around with the same thing. So that is the discussion for my pass by value and pass by reference. If you understand that, that is great. Also, if you have any confusion, please shoot me a note and I will try to address that. Also, if there are any topics that you want me to discuss, I will also discuss those. I'm also soon going to be start a series on data structures and discuss some common data structure topics. Thank you. And if you like this, you can subscribe so that you can get the notifications for any incoming new videos from me.